Hello and good afternoon and welcome to what we've called the Hillcrest webinar. Hillcrest, or as some of us call it, the Upper Highway area. I'm Judy Adams. I'm representing the Crest magazine and I'm the host for this webinar today. I've worked within this Upper Highway community for over 10 years, been involved in the publishing of the Crest magazine. Hopefully most of you are familiar with the Crest magazine and its content. We like to believe at the Crest magazine that we mirror the way of life within this community. And we have certainly witnessed over the past 10 odd years an evolution from our early days where we mainly had horses on our covers to today a cosmopolitan and diverse society. This community certainly boasts some of the finest schools in our country, fabulous shopping centres, we've got hospitals and wonderful restaurants. I've always loved the fact that this community is extremely proud of its history. And somehow it's also always managed to retain its village charm, which is obviously very evident today. This area is a great place to call home. And today we've got an interesting panel of people, industry experts, mainly from property, education and retail. They're here to chat to us about the area. Today we really want to understand what is the culture of the Upper Highway area. What is it like to live in this area? What is the value proposition that this region offers? And we also just want to look and unpack at some relevant and current market trends. So let me introduce you to the panel. As I mentioned each person's name, maybe you can just raise their hand. David Rolls, if you can raise your hand there. David is the developer of Watercrest Mall and the Woods, among some other developments. We've got Jeff Perkins. Jeff, if you can raise your hand there. Jeff is from the Collins Group and is involved in the Emberton estate. Emberton has 550 new homes coming to the area, of which 330 are already complete. Haley, if you can raise your hand. Haley is the marketing and communications manager for Waterfall Schools in the area. David Jones, David, you there, raising your hand. From Hillcrest, a familiar face within the community, and he's been operating here for close on 30 years. Andrew Smith, Andrew from Smith Properties, responsible for a number of property sales within the area. And finally, we've got Rory Wilkinson. Rory, you there? Rory is an independent planning and development specialist that's been involved in the planning of large-scale infrastructure and development in this area. So today we want to encourage people to send through their questions. I will certainly monitor those questions and direct them to the correct person. But for me, just to kick off with some questions specifically around market trends, I am going to start with David Jones. David from Smith Properties is involved in publishing the quarterly market review. Straight off, Dave, is this market in an upward or a downward trend?
It's a very interesting tale. It's a very interesting tale, and thanks for the opportunity. This market has been one of the most consistent. We normally have 1,100 properties, residential properties per annum, and in 2019, which was an election year, we moved up to 1,300 property sales. But it's almost a tale of two markets. We had a complete shift in what we were selling in the Upper Highway, and that was characterized by 500 apartment sales, normally around R1 million, and normally for first-time buyers. This is a brand new market for the Upper Highway area, and the traditional market moved to 800 sales. So in one sense, our overall market increased by 20% because we had 500 apartment sales and 800 traditional property sales, giving us 1,300, 20% up. But if you look at the traditional market, they actually moved from 1,100 down to 800, which was in fact around a 25% slowdown. But we are very encouraged by the new apartment market because it's bringing a new person into the market. A younger person, a person returning to the area. It also gives investors a strong opportunity. In the residential market, you've always got to look at stock. Our normal stock holding is around 1,000 items for sale at any one time. Currently, though, we are carrying 2,200 items for sale. So to some extent, we are an overstock market, and pricing becomes key in an overstock market. And of course, we can now call that, in overall terms, a buyer's market. A big shift in the properties that are selling. 85% of the market is currently below 3 million. And people come up here mainly for the schooling. That is the top reason for people entering this area. They also come here because of value compared to Durban North and Ballito and Umhlanga. And of course, the country lifestyle is a big pull. Guys who enjoy mountain biking, cycling, running, horses, the Shongweni market, all of those items characterize some of the reason that people come up here. I often get asked about why do people sell? And the key reason for selling, the number one, is basically downsizing. That is for people of a certain age who need something smaller, but there's also financial downsizing going on. And we're seeing a new trend where we are having smaller, more boutique type developments come up, 10, 11, 12 units. There's one in Assegai called 40 on Assegai, 11 units, modern, 3 bedrooms, all en suite, 90% off the grid, 24-hour man security near the new hospital. And it's that kind of product which is under 3 million rand, which is now a new trend. People often worry about the prices. Well, over the last 12 years, we've seen an average price increase of around 6.8%. We've seen a slowdown in the last 2 years to around 4%, but it's still an area where the demand, in fact, has grown. I've often get asked, surely apartments and townhouses are what people want? And the answer is yes. Apartments are currently the top selling product, but the rest, it's a mix between townhouses and houses. And some of the most interesting price categories that sell are freestanding houses between 1.5 and 2, and freestanding houses between 2.5 and 3 are number 3 and 4 in terms of popularity. And it's those people that interest me because they are upgrading from places like Pinetown and coming into the area for schooling.
That's fantastic. I think we you know, I think it gives us a really good insight into the variety of what's available. I like the idea of movement within the area. The apartment concept is very exciting. Let's just quickly get a view from Jeff. They are major property developments within KZN. Jeff, with Emberton, why the Upper Highway area?
Thanks so much, dudes. Yeah, we were always keen on what was the old driving range. Many cups of tea with Russell Halstead on his veranda discussing what it could amount to in time. And what we saw going back to that stage was a gap to produce an affordable lifestyle with all the amenities that one would want in an estate. Obviously, top of the list being a robust security setup, but then being able to supply all those sports amenities and tennis and BMX tracks and a lap swimming pool and a fantastic bar and restaurant, all starting at under R1 million. And I mean, that was unheard of then. And it was very difficult to take that kind of product on the coast. The coast traditionally is more expensive, and still to have a reasonable sized unit up in that area. And of course, as Dave Jones was mentioning earlier, there's just an abundance of schools out there. It has a superb climate all year round. It's just that little bit cooler. And
Jeff, maybe just give us a bit of insight into your 330 homes that have already been sold. What is the type of family that's moving into Emberton? Give us a bit of insight into that family.
predominantly they've been, I mean, there've been a lot of young professionals, young families as well. So it was important for us to have kids that we can keep them entertained. But a lot of young professional, newly qualified people, their first home, and wanting the comfort of lock up and go, no security issues, single professionals, and so on. So it's been really exciting for all intents. A successful development for the area from our perspective, and we delight.
No, that's fantastic, Jeff. And just to further extend on understanding the type of people that are living in this community, if I can specifically address a question to Hayley. Hayley, I know that you grew up in this area, and you've chosen to still call it your home. Give us a little bit of insight into why you still haven't left the area and it is still your home.
So I grew up in Hillcrest, and after school and varsity, I went overseas for almost 10 years. And during that time, I did a lot of traveling and checked out a lot of different places. And I actually met my husband, who's Scottish, while I was over there. But eventually, I couldn't keep away from home. And we came back to South Africa and had a really good look around. We knew we wanted to be in South Africa, but we were open to all kinds of options. We looked at Cape Town, all along the coast, and Hillcrest really ticked all the boxes for us. Obviously, it's a big factor that my family are here, but everything else was right as well. There's incredible quality in terms of what you get in property, the wide variety, and the quality and the price are amazing. And also, as everyone said, the schools, there's a wide range and incredibly good schools, whether it's government, private, a range of sizes, they're all amazing. And the community is very special. It's something that I think Hillcrest it stands out in that the community are really vibrant and engaged, and it's a great place to be.
That's fantastic, Hayley. And just to further unpack that, just going now as representing an independent school, tell us a little bit about, in 2020, who is this family that is attending an independent school within this community? What do they want? And what are they looking for?
So what we see typically, we're a relatively new school, and a lot of our families are typically both mom and dad work. We see a lot of very kind of innovative, hardworking families with 2 or 3 kids. These families have moved from other areas. So they've moved to Hillcrest for similar reasons to the ones I've described, plus the security, the access to incredible places. I mean, this area is beautiful. There's generally also, they're quite active. There's a very good balance here, I think, between work and pleasure, and it's an incredibly convenient place to live. So I think the people who are choosing to live here want to make the most of all those aspects of their lives.
That's fantastic, Hannah. There certainly are lots of those aspects. Dave Rolls, if I can get you on the floor next, knowing that you heavily invested in the area, specifically in the Watercrest Mall in the Woods. Dave, I'm interested to hear from you your views on the current context we're living in South Africa at the moment, and where do you see things heading?
Look, I think from a retail perspective, if I can just cover the mall side of it, where we started, the mall was developed, 5 years ago, and it's obviously growing into itself. Normally these malls sort of take 5 to 10 years to grow in. There has been a bit of retail pressure generally throughout the country, but we've seen the foot counts growing quite substantially year on year in the mall. But from retail trends, what we've seen happening now is people want value for money, whether it be your value clothing or your value vehicles or value housing. It's all about value for money. Higher end brands in the retail industry not doing that well. But yeah, so it's all basically people looking for a bargain, and I think with this COVID-19 and the shortage of cash, that's gonna carry on. In the wood side of it, it's sorry.
No, carry on. Let's talk about the Woods.
So from the Woods is a 356 unit development. It's situated 200 meters from the Watercrest Mall, just down Brackenhill Road. being developed in phases. And that again is sort of entry-level housing starting from sort of 700,000 up to sort of 1.2 million, 1, 2, 3, and row houses being townhouses. And again, this has been quite successful. It's entry-level. A lot of end users where we thought there might be investment buyers, but it's actually been a lot of end users. And I think now with the interest rates dropping, you'll see probably more investment buyers coming in. But yeah, it's been successful. First 60 units we launched, we sold 56 phase 1. Phase 2, we launched 54 units, we sold 35, which is quite encouraging. But again, it just shows that market trend of people wanting value for money. And I think Dave Jones alluded to anything under the sort of the 3 million mark. That's where the sweet spots are.
I mean, Dave, you and I were dudes, if I can just jump in, have been chatting off air, and you raised the point, you know, if you've got a bit of cash around, what do you do with it? You can put it in the bank and get 3% if you're lucky. Take a gamble on some stocks and shares, and the volatility there has been spectacular. Or there's the property option where you're seeing fantastic returns now at interest rates not seen in 50 years. I mean, it's...
I think, Jeff, what you say is so right. And if you actually just do the maths and numbers on that, so you're a cash buyer, interest rates have come right down. You put your money in the bank, you're getting 3%. As Andrew said, if you're buying a unit and you're getting between 7 and 9% return, you're also getting the capital growth of, say, another 4%. So your actual effective rate of return, less inflation, is about 10%. If you take your cash of 3% and inflation's running at 4%, you're actually at a negative 1% growth per year. So your cash is getting eaten away year on year because of our inflation. So I think that's where we're going to see now, with interest rates as low as they are, that you're going to get more of those investment buyers coming in because they want that return and also the capital appreciation.
We've had a question in from Dustin. I don't really want to go into specifics with regards to actual values, but what's the rental market like? Who you know, buying and renting that out is the question that we've had from Dustin. Who do you think is best to answer that? Maybe Andrew? Or you're more on the property sales?
No, I'm happy to answer that, Dudi. Our teams do sales as well as rentals. And we've got an incredible demand for rentals stock. You know, the investors that are contemplating moving into ownership and buying 1 and 2 bedroom apartments are going to get great yields. Dave alluded to that and Jeff alluded to that. But we've got a very healthy rental situation, and it's not just Emberton. I'm talking across the estates that we represent, where we have lots of families that are either in transit and waiting to make the Upper Highway their permanent home, and so they rent for a while. But certainly, Dustin, the rental demand in the highway, Upper Highway, is relentless. My guys that are sitting in these estates have got rental books that they are waiting to fill with opportunities.
We've got a question from Trevor. Maybe Jeff, this one is for you. Can you give examples of rate of return on, say, something like Emberton? What are the yields for a potential investor?
Well, if you look at some of the 1-bed stock that went out, and Dave also has some of that stock, we launched that product at a little under 800,000. You're sitting in that rates free bracket. The levies, because of the PQs on that, are really low in comparison to the entire estate. You're borrowing money. Let's assume you're only getting 7.25%. That's with a 100% bond. You haven't put a cent down. And I've actually got one of those properties, and the rental I'm achieving there is 7,500 Rand a month. So when you extrapolate that out over a year, that's 85,000 Rand, 85,000 Rand income. Take off your bond on, let's say, 800,000 at 7.25%. You're putting money in your pocket every single month. Now, I mean, those times we haven't seen duty certainly in my lifetime. It was always very, very hard to from the gun get involved in a residential investment And it can be, you know, it can be, it's a big step for some people, buying into something like that as an investment. And you always traditionally had to wait 5, 6, 7 years before you just slipped over that curve, where your rental escalations had got to a point and had been, your repayments had remained static, where you became positive. But now you're doing it almost instantly, and that's never been seen, not in my time. So it's fantastic.
And Jeff, would you say that is specific to this area where you're seeing that yield, or is that across the property market, regardless of obviously location? We know that. Is there anything special about this location that maybe you're getting a greater yield?
Yeah, I do, because I think the gap between what you achieve as a rental in the highway area as opposed to what you could achieve for the same kind of property, let's say in the Umhlanga area, I think that gap is far narrower than what you would pay for the same property in the highway area as opposed to in that Umhlanga area. And really, at the end of the day, that's what's going to affect the
I agree. Andrew, just to go back to you to just chat a little bit about what's gone on in property sales during the lockdown, engagement, you know, have you made any sales specifically related to this region?
Judy, yeah, we haven't been able to make sales per se. What we have done is we've signed, let's call them virtual agreements, where it's subject to viewing of property. So we've had to abide by the government guidelines in terms of real estate, but we have certainly been blown away by the interest that's been shown, especially in the online presence. You know, the social media platforms have just gone, and we're probably sitting with about 200 inquiries that have come through to us to work on over the last 8 weeks, and that in itself is just phenomenal. I, for one, was very, very concerned, as all of us out there probably still are, about the impact that this pandemic was going to have on our individual sectors. And the property market certainly wasn't going to escape this. But it's been so fantastic to see how the public have responded to products like this. And particularly the Upper Highway. You know, it's a beautiful part of the world. And, you know, you guys that are sitting there in Hillcrest right now, different friends of mine have called me this morning to say, gee, we were at 3 degrees, well, we're at 5 degrees. You guys are seeing the leaves turn brown. I'm very jealous of the fireplaces and the red wine at night. So it's a beautiful part of the world, and you know, we must just continue to, you know, to really market ourselves in that fashion. I mentioned off air as well that, you know, a lot of the North Coast properties are taking the shine at the moment, and we mustn't forget that we're in a very, very special part of the world, with beautiful facilities, great schools, great permanent residential environment. So we've been so blessed, Judy, to get the response that we've got off of our social media platforms. And it's come across a very broad spectrum of the market, where we've seen people at different life stages that have actually got hold of us to say, look, it's my first property. I'm a first-time buyer. What can you give me? And all the way through, you know, as I said, the different life stages, which includes the newly married young couple. Maybe they've just got their first child. They're looking for security, through to the downscalers that they spoke about, the panelists spoke about earlier, coming off the big homes in Winston Park, Kloof, and looking for lifestyle. You know, they don't want to mow the big garden and clean the pool and, you know, pay the rates. They're looking for a different lock up and go type of lifestyle. So I've got a lot of downscalers. And then lastly, I think the investors that we touched on are really becoming a big component of our inquiries, because where do you put your cash right now? What do you do if you're fortunate enough to have some cash? What do you do with it? And property is yielding incredible on the back of these interest rates, and also the developer incentives that are out there is yielding really, really great yields. And just some of the incentives that I'll just touch on before I go off are things like where the developers have negotiated 100% bonds with the banks, where they've agreed to cover conveyancing fees, where there's no deposits payable. You know, the opportunity to buy has never been better. So yeah, we're very excited about a residential property in Upper Highway.
Okay, and it's perfect timing. We just got a question in from Trevor, because I do want to speak to Rory Wilkinson as a planning and development specialist. Rory, without a doubt, just speaking to the panel, the area is growing, but it's an established area. So how does an area like Hillcrest or the Upper Highway area respond to new developments planned on a massive scale? And Trevor specifically referring to the proposed new mega shopping complex near Shongweni. Could you give us a bit of insight into that?
Yeah, thanks, Judy. Look, there's no doubt, a place like Hillcrest, given the amenities and lifestyle and obvious points of attraction that do enable a huge growing demand, that new development will come. And I think the one advantage that Hillcrest has, let's say, in contrast to a place like Umhlanga, where Umhlanga's growth was largely driven off a commercial base. So there was a lot of new commercial office developments, retail developments that attracted people into that area. I think obviously with this new, with COVID and increasing focus around the home, I think that the reverse is going to happen, where people are going to be attracted to, firstly, an area of lifestyle, as opposed to worrying about where they work, where they're going to work. So a place like Hillcrest with all the amenities, schools, retail, etc., the lifestyle, that is going to take a huge amount of demand. And then, the regional trends or regional growth dynamics, such as, Cato Ridge industrial development, Keystone, obviously Peter Maritzburg, those are going to even increase and enhance the demand for residential opportunities in places like Hillcrest, which are so well located, hugely accessible. And then you add on a significant, massive development like Shongweni, which has the Mall of the West as a key part of that. And to me, that offers a complementary but a different demand, and it can actually draw a whole new complementary demand to an area in close proximity to Hillcrest, but not actually imposing itself or developing over Hillcrest, so to speak. So there's still going to be a place for the historical, natural previous areas of Hillcrest to continue to grow whilst retaining their character. But obviously the likes of Shongweni offer a huge new opportunity for different product, different markets, etc. That will certainly complement Hillcrest and vice versa.
Rory, just to look at this from a macro perspective, what do you think makes Hillcrest, or I keep referring to Upper Highway area, the destination that it is?
I think, as I sort of alluded to, there are few areas across the region that hold a real particular residential lifestyle character that hasn't been significantly prejudiced or impacted by new development. And I think the likes of the Shongweni development, which is far enough away from the historical core of Hillcrest to not subsume itself over Hillcrest. So there's no doubt, given the existing amenities, and remember, Umhlanga also didn't have all the amenity that Hillcrest already is endowed with. So the demand for residential in the historical Hillcrest Upper Highway area is only going to increase in time.
Thanks, Rory. I think we've really got a good idea, and there's been a few people who refer to the amenities, and specifically I think the schools as an attraction to this area, attracting that young family. Dave, maybe just David Jones, to go back to you. Having been in this area for 28, close on 30 years, what are some highlights to you that stand out that you've seen change positively and where you are today as a community?
I think one of the things that's become clear to me is that the area has and will continue to have, as you've just heard from Rory, continual development of a positive kind. The development's well organized to a large extent, and this continual multifaceted development is what almost gives the Upper Highway its own economic vacuum. It's a very healthy community in terms of economic activities. So if you look at the number of new car outlets, the number of new restaurants, most of the shopping centres have been upgraded. Of course, we've got a Watercrest Mall, and we've got the private hospital, and a very healthy number of retirees in the area. So our area is blessed with continual development, also choice of property and the availability of land. If you look at the Shongweni aspect that Rory is talking about, there is the availability of development space, which many of our competitor areas are running out of. And we've been fortunate in that respect.
Fantastic. We have prepared a short video clip which we're going to run now, and it's really just to summarize what this area offers in terms of its amenities, but it's also its lifestyle that I think that we have touched on. If there's anybody else on the panel that has anything else they'd like to contribute, you're welcome to do that now ahead of the screening of that short clip, and then we're ready to conclude. So if there are any more questions, we'd love the opportunity to answer them. But anyone from the panel with any final views? Maybe start with you, Jeff.
Duty, yeah. I mean, we invested in the Hillcrest area for all the reasons that I mentioned before, and we did it on scale. You know, we didn't go in small. We wanted to have the kind of estate that warrants the amenities that we're investing in it, and that can afford to run those amenities. You know, often it's very difficult for very small estates. People end up getting compromised with very high levies and limited amenities. So I think Hillcrest has developed as quickly as it has on the basis with developments like the Woods and Cotswold Fens and Emberton and so on, because it has brilliant schools. I mean, that's something that's a little bit of a concern sort of in the Umhlanga area. You know, right now in the Umhlanga area, there's one state school, a primary school, and the rest are private schools. And thankfully the likes of Crawford's and the Currays and that are coming up with different models. So it's not just one kind of private school. But Hillcrest just seems to have an abundance. You've got so much choice on that side. So it's all very well having the homes and wanting to live there. If you've got to then drive 30 k's to take your kids to school, that's a disaster. So
I agree. Yep.
It's just ticked so many of those boxes, and that's why these estates are working in that area. It's also, I mean, the one thing we haven't touched on, it's a 25-minute drive down to Umhlanga or Durban, and a short skip and a hop up to Maritzburg on the other way. So for those guys that move around a bit, it's bang in the middle, great climate, great schools, lots to offer. So that's
fantastic, Jeff.
And we'll be for a while.
That is really great. Yeah, Andrew, anything from you in closing?
Really, for me, I think I just want to talk to the two different types of folk that are listening to this webinar today. And those are people that currently live in Hillcrest, that traditionally have bought a home and that have got an investment now in fixed property and might be a little bit concerned about the value of their property and should they buy, should they sell. I just want to tell everybody out there that Hillcrest, because of its demand, because of its schools, it continually drives people into our area. Our recovery, yes, we're going to lose value, and we all have lost some value to some degree. But that recovery will be a lot quicker than in other areas because of the demand that the area demands. So sit tight and weather the storm. Things will change. We're in a beautiful neck of the woods, and don't do anything. Don't panic at all. Just. That's very real. And then, of course, to the developers that we've got on this panel, thanks for offering this entry-level product as well, because traditionally Hillcrest has been, the more traditional home. And for those people that are considering buying, the time is now. Go and visit one of the estates, the many estates in the area, and you'll find a lovely opportunity there.
That's very comforting. Thank you, Andrew. Hayley, from your side, both, I think specifically if you related to school, you were any?
Yeah, so the one thing that just keeps coming to mind listening to all the panelists talk is And from my experience being at the school with families from pre-primary to matric, we see the full range of kind of dynamics. And the one thing that is common is that the people who choose to live here are heavily invested. Both, not so much, I mean, obviously there's the financial side, but the people who live here love the area. They value the authenticity of what we have here, the natural environment, and there's a real positivity and I think a brilliant engagement that I think speaks very well for the future of the area. People are invested here and they're going to make it an incredible place to be now and for a long time into the future.
It's fabulous because it's a place you're proud to call your home. And there's nothing like a community that is proud, because you know the spin-offs from that in terms of lifestyle is just fantastic. So and Dave Jones, from your side, in conclusion, anything else that you'd like to share with us?
There are 20,000 odd residential homes in this area, and the average selling price is 2 million rand. And for a freestanding house of 2 million rand, you're going to get a 3 or 4 bedroom home on a half acre with a pool and a double garage. That's huge value compared to many other areas. And if you link that to lifestyle and the schools and the amenities, it's a good place to come to.
Couldn't agree with you more. Thank you, Dave. And let's just some final words from yourself, Rory.
No, thanks, Judy. But there's no doubt, following what David said, is that we certainly don't want to see new growth and development as being a threat to Hillcrest. I think Hillcrest offers a massive opportunity to enable new growth and development to occur in the right areas, and accommodating a whole new market. But at the same time, protecting and enabling historical Hillcrest to retain its character. So I think there's a massive, unique position that Hillcrest finds itself in. That should be no feeling of being threatened, but really it's an increasingly cosmopolitan area and the opportunities for all.
Oh, that's fantastic. So I think if we could play the video now, and then if there are any further questions, you're welcome to send them through during the video, and then we're ready to conclude. I think just coming off the back of that, there's certainly a wonderful sense of pride and a sense of community that is very evident in those visuals. So to say to all the listeners and everyone that's listened to us today, and to thank the panel, I certainly feel it's been a very insightful and useful webinar. I just maybe see that there is one question. If we haven't actually got to your questions, I think that we will address them individually afterwards. But enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Judy.
Thanks,
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye. Thanks, Judy.